Alright, so we're going to be trying to do something, should be pretty easy today. We're going to try and cast resin bases. Something I've never done before, but I've done other resin casting, so hypothetically this should be easier than the other stuff I've done. So this is kind of what we're going to be trying to make here. These ones are actually from Secret Weapons Miniatures. Obviously I'm not reproducing theirs, I'm trying to make my own. But just some nice little resin bases, that way I don't have to worry about basing later on. So what I have is of course just a standard 25mm round plastic base, and I actually bought the Warhammer basing kit. It comes with just a bunch of little resin basing pieces. Now this is the fantasy one, so they're mostly square, so we're going to make them fit, but I really wanted the old world kind of feel, so like little cobblestone bits and stuff like that rather than the more techie ones. So what we're going to do today is this little blast crater. I'm going to put that on my 25mm base. As you can see, it kind of sticks over the edges, so I'm going to make it fit. But I'm going to glue that on there, sand down the edges and make it fit, and that'll be our base we're going to reproduce. Got it off screen there. So that's going to be the base we're going to reproduce once I get all sanded down. I'll take care of that off camera and I'll come back when I get it done. But first, what we all need, I'm using this Smooth On. It's a two-piece silicone, or two-part silicone. It's a 1-to-1 mixture. It comes in these two giant bottles here. Now mine's pretty low, it's getting kind of empty, so I'm only going to be doing the one base. Normally if I did bases, I'd be making probably 5 at a time, so that way I can do half a squad with each mixing of resin. But being as I'm almost out of this, I'm only going to be doing the one base, but it'll be enough to show you what you need. The next thing is the actual resin itself. I'm using Amazing Casting resin. This is actually not a great resin. It's okay for hobby and stuff like that. It'll work really well for bases, but if you're doing some nice detailed stuff, I wouldn't recommend this for it. But for bases, this will work great. And it also comes in a 1-to-1, these little tubes. As you can see, I'm pretty much out of it. I'm getting pretty low there. I've done a lot of work with it lately. But I'm really happy with it. For being a cheap resin, it's worked well for me. And then Legos. Legos are really handy. I'll show you why in a little bit. You use those to make your mold. But got some Legos, a little bit of clay. Make sure your clay is not a sulfur-based clay, and get this kind that doesn't harden when left out in the air. This is the oven baking kind. And you'll use that with your Legos here in a minute. I'll show you why we got that. But I'll be back when I get that base built, and we'll take the first step here. Alright, so we now have our base made. You can see I have my 25mm base down here. I glued the resin piece from the basing kit on top of it, and it was a big square piece. I just clipped off the edges with my little clippers, and then I have one of these little like a die grinder almost, but it's a little cheap one. It's even got a cord from Harbor Freight. It's like $5 or something like that. But anyway, I just use that to sound down the edges, so it's nice and smoother on the edges now. So you have a good little 25mm base. So now we need to make the box for our mold. So what I have here, this is just a piece of white tile. That's all it is, just a big chunk of tile. And this will be the base of our box. So I need to glue my base in the middle of there. And this is why I use the Legos. This is our actual mold box we're making. You can tell I just made it out of 2 stacks of Legos there. And you want it big enough that it fits around your base and still leaves a little clearance on your side. This one actually, you can see I actually leave a little more clearance than I need to around the edges. You can get a little closer than that, but that's just the way the Legos fall, and it'll work out fine. And you want to make it tall enough so that you're not going to have a weak spot in the top where the silicone pours on top. So that's why I made it 2 high instead of just 1. Anyway, so that's going to be our mold box. So the reason we needed the clay is for sealing the edges of the box. If we were making a 2-piece mold, like this one here, this is a 2-piece mold, you would actually lay a layer of clay down on the bottom and stick the base on top of it to make the other half. But well, I might do that in another one. It gets more complicated to duplicating actual models because there might be some legal stuff going on there. But for something I've created myself, there's no problem. So that's why I'm doing the base. But anyway, so in this case, the only reason I'm going to use the clay is to seal the edges of the box. So I'll build the box real quick and I'll be right back. Alright, so now we have our mold box built. You can see I glued down the base in the middle, and around the edges here I have my clay pressed in. The clay is just there to make sure the silicone doesn't leak out underneath the Legos, and also holds the Legos in place. So they're kind of locked in on the tile now. So that's the whole base, all we need. So now you need to figure out how much silicone you're going to need to put in the mold. And there's a couple ways you can go about this. The way I like to do it is these are my little measuring cups that actually pour the silicone in. And I just take rice. You can use water, but the problem with water is then you have to let your mold, you have to let your box dry before you pour in the silicone and everything. So if you just take a bit of rice, you can pour the rice in until you fill up your mold box. And that way it'll tell you how much volume you need of your silicone without just kind of guessing and wasting silicone or not having enough silicone. So you can see that's almost full, so it's going to take just a little over one of my little cups. And you use 2 cups anyway, because 1 for each part of the silicone. So I'm going to fill them just a little above half on each one. I'll put them in a mixing pot and I'll pour them in and I'll show you that, so I'll be back. Alright, so we're back with our actual pouring of the silicone. You can see down here I have my 2 parts. I actually poured a little more than I needed to. The pink half I poured first, it's the really thick half. And I poured a little bit more than I needed, but you need to go 1 to 1, so I ended up pouring the same amount of blue. So I'm gonna have a little left over, but it's not that big of a deal. Always make sure you read all your instructions and stir well before using, so make sure you stir it up. Don't let it sit. The pink part, this is actually the pink part, but you don't the yellow container, isn't so bad, but the blue one really separates after it sits for a while, so you really need to stir the blue one. But anyway, so that's what we got. You can see there's some bubbles. Where are you at? There you go. You can see there's a little couple bubbles up there. Bubbles are really bad when casting, so you kind of want to take things easy with this. You don't need to be in a super big hurry with the silicone. It has a pretty good work time. When we get to the resin later on, the resin dries extremely quickly. So this you can kind of take your time more with. You don't want to put a lot of bubbles into it, because if you put bubbles in this, you're going to have bubbles in all of your molds. So this is just my little cup I used to pour things with. It's actually, believe it or not, an old spray paint can lid. That's just what I've been using, so that's just what I'm going to use. So we'll start off with the pink one. You're going to pour them nice and slow, because like I said, you don't want to introduce a whole bunch of bubbles into the silicone for your mold. You get all that out of there real quick. Try not to agitate it too much. Like I said, the pink part is the really thick part. Then the blue part is more runny, so it'll pour right on top. They're pretty easy. And this, believe it or not, takes like 6 hours to dry. So you don't gotta worry about it like setting up on you instantly. So there we go, we got our blue and our pink one. Now we kind of fold it together. Don't create too many bubbles, but get a good mix. You can tell, well, I keep trying to mix this one real quick. You can tell on this mold has 2 separate colors. It's supposed to be this purple color, not the blue color. This one's actually an inappropriate mix. That didn't come out the best. It still works. It's still a functional mold. It wasn't a proper mixture. That was actually my first real attempt over there. So we'll see how this one comes out. We'll be back in a minute when I get this mixed up. Alright, so we're back after mixing it, and you can see we have a nice purple color in there now. So it's good mixed. So now you want to do a good slow pour into your mold, and you don't want to pour it right on top of your piece that you're casting. So we're going to kind of pour it off to the side, and it'll flow over everything. So you want to pour it on top because you don't want to trap any bubbles down inside there. So we're in a nice slow pour, try to prevent any bubbles from getting in the silicone. I'll come out here in just a second. And you probably can't see this from up there. I'll try and turn it maybe. So it's going to be nice, easy, slow stream. And you can see it's pouring in the corner right next to it there. And it's going to slowly just fold over the entire base. And this could take just a little bit. So we'll probably cut out the rest of it and we'll be back when it's done. Alright, so we're back now. We've got it all poured in there. There's actually some bubbles up there on the surface, if you can see those. So it's kind of a little worrisome. It got a little bubbly on me there. But hopefully they all pop up to the surface here and they leave the bottom nice and flat down where the base is. So we'll see when it dries. Like I said, this is going to take 6 hours to dry. So we'll be back sometime tonight to demold it, or anyway, to get out of the box here. And the silicone's really, the silicone itself takes a long time, but the resin is really quick, so we will actually be able to produce bases by tonight. But anyway, we'll be back later tonight when this is hardened and see what happens. Alright, so we're back about 6 hours later, actually a little bit more, and our silicone is nice and hard now. So we're going to demold it and take it out of our little little Lego bin we have here. And got stuck in there from the silicone. But you can see we're going to end up with this little tiny brick of this little brick. This is all your, there we go. That is your new mold. So you can see how much space I have here left around the edges. I actually could have made that a little bit smaller, my box, so I wouldn't have had to use up so much silicone for this. But it's not bad, it'll hold up that way anyway. And I don't know if you can see the detail. Oop, where we got, there you are. You can see that's the crater in there. This is weird trying to do this backwards. Anyway, that's the crater in there. You can see there's a little lip right in there. I'm gonna have to file that edge off. My base is glued down. Anyway, if you can see the edge of the base, it's actually a little tiny gap where that resin piece was warped on top of the 25mm base. Such that little lip in there, I'll just shave it off with a razor blade so that way when I do my casts I won't have that gap in there. And you can do a little bit of cleaning on the mold. The cleaner you make your mold, the cleaner your resin pieces will come out when they're finished. So we'll be back in a little bit. I'm going to clean this out, I'm going to mix up some resin, and we'll be back for showing you make the final product. Alright, so now I'm back, clean everything up. As you can see, I got my little mold. I have shaved off all those little burrs on the inside there, so it's just nice and smoother on the edges. Here I have my two parts of the resin, and that's it. Got a stir and stick, and we're ready to go. I'm gonna use this little tray here just to pour it in so I can get all over this mat. But anyway, I didn't bother measuring out the exact. I'm just gonna use this as a test pour and find out how much this is gonna take up. I have this other little mold that I'll use the excess resin and fill up. So we'll find out how much it takes here. So I always like to pour, one's usually a little more liquidy and one's more thick, so I just pour the thinner one into the thicker one. And after you start mixing, you only have about 30 seconds before you want to start pouring it. So here we go. And once again, you don't want to introduce a whole bunch of air bubbles. You want to get it nice and mixed, but don't like start splashing it around because you don't want bubbles in your finished product. And you'll see when you probably can't see from up there, it's kind of milky looking. I kind of stir it until it is clear. It's not going to go completely clear like water, but you won't get that milkiness in it anymore. And just like that, there's no more milky, no more lines, it's not white anymore. Kind of got some on myself there. Alright, so here we go. So I'm going to pour a little bit of this in here. Pour it nice and slow and just fill up your mold. And here we go, she's full. So these are some shoulder pads, that's what these are here. So I'm going to use the rest of this on these shoulder pads. I kind of spread them out so that way it flows down into them a little better. This is just opening up the mold so that it flows down. The shoulder pads are kind of deep, kind of long. But if you open it up, get those bubbles out. You can see two bubbles just popped out of that one there. You don't need bubbles down in the very bottom. And there you go. So now this will take about 15-20 minutes to dry. Once it's all dry, I'll show you demolding both of them. And the shoulder pads are made the exact same way as the base. You just line them up in a container. I stand them up tall-wise, line them up 5 in a row is what I did here. And then pour the resin on top of them. It's a one-piece mold, same exact process. Just you're making little skinny pieces instead of flat round ones. It gets more complicated when you get to a two-piece mold, but I might cover that video later. These are one-piece molds, they work great. So we'll be back in 15 minutes and see what happens. Alright, so we're back. Our resin is cured. You see it's a white resin. So I got my shoulder pads here, and then the base we've been working on. And like I said earlier, I said one base because I'm kind of limited on my silicone that I have. I'm running low. But if I was to actually do like a whole series of bases for an army, I would probably make this a longer, kind of like this one is long and skinny, and have probably 5 bases lined up in it. So every time I cast, I could do 5 bases at a time. That'd be the best thing to do. But I'm just doing the one just to show what can happen. But anyways, it's really easy. You just kind of tweak the edges to pop out the mold. You loosen it from the surfaces and you can pop it right out. You can see there it is. I'm gonna put some stuff on here in a minute. But and then this one is the shoulder pads that I made. Kind of got a little messy there because I just poured it over the top. Hopefully they're gonna come out. There you go. So you can see you got a whole line of shoulder pads there. They have to do some trimming obviously to get this extra resin off. You got a couple of bubbles in there, but they're cool. They have swords on the front of them. They're kind of nifty. I really like them. Anyway, they're gonna work out well. I've been making a bunch of these. This is the first mold I ever made, and it's been going a long time. This one's been working really well. All right, so I just went ahead and threw some definitely mud down on the base just so you can see some of the detail, because the white's just not gonna show up. But let's see where this thing's at. Here we go. So you can kind of see the detail on that there. Oop, lose focus. It came out really well. You can do a whole bunch of these, like those big bottles. These here, this is only about $12. So you can do literally probably 2 or 3 armies worth of bases for that. You can make tons of these things. But anyway, that's it. It's really simple. It's a one-piece mold. They're super easy to make, really cost effective. The most expensive part, the whole thing's the silicone. But the 2 big ones I have were about 30 bucks, and I've made a bunch of molds with them, including that big one that I showed earlier. And I still have a little bit left for another mold I'm gonna be working on. But anyway, it's great for making resin bases. I'm a huge fan of resin bases. One of the things I hate the most is basing an army. So that's it. That's what we're doing.